Remember that front page headline from a couple of days ago in the Washington Post? We put it up on the show. This was the morning after the first vaccine doses went out. This headline was so good. Disparaged by Trump, scientists deliver. And it is plainly true, right? Scientists and science did deliver in terms of getting us vaccines. But now, tonight, only 3 days into this, the problem is that while scientists delivered us the vaccine, the actual literal delivery of the vaccine, the movement of the vaccine to us, that part of it has to be managed not just by science and scientists, that part has to be managed by the federal government, which is still run by the Trump administration. And now there is trouble with that. The first signs of it were yesterday. Bloomberg News headlined it late yesterday as the first snags in the delivery of the vaccine. That was in response to the Trump administration announcing yesterday, without explaining it, that for some reason, although Pfizer shipped 2.9 million doses of the vaccine this week, next week that will drop. They're only going to ship 2 million doses next week. Well, why is that? They really wouldn't say substantively. The only explanation given from the Trump administration was from Alex Azar, the perpetually seemingly annoyed, peeved, combative Trump administration health secretary, who said sort of off the cuff, without any elaboration, that Pfizer, the company that makes the vaccine, was, quote, coming up short. That's a big deal. There's a problem with Pfizer? They're not able to make the vaccine they said they could. You're the health secretary of the United States of America in the middle of a pandemic when we were in the first days of rolling out a vaccine, and you just say they're coming up short, but you don't want to talk about it? That's a really serious thing to say. Is that really true? Is there some problem with Pfizer and their production of the vaccine? Apparently there's no problem. Of course what Alex Azar said isn't true. If we haven't learned that lesson after 4 years with these people, we never will. Look at this. Pfizer put out this statement in response. If you hear the hair on the back of my neck standing up, it's because I have feelings about this. Pfizer Incorporated today released the following statement to address public comments that allege there are issues in the production and distribution of the company's COVID-19 vaccine. Pfizer is not having any production issues with our COVID-19 vaccine, and no shipments containing the vaccine are on hold or delayed. This week, we successfully shipped all 2.9 million doses that we were asked to ship by the U.S. government to the locations specified by them. We have millions more doses sitting in our warehouse, but as of now, we have not received any shipment instructions for additional doses. We have millions more doses sitting in our warehouse, but we get shipment directions from the U.S. government, and they haven't given us any shipment instructions for what we should do with the millions of doses that we have just sitting here. More than 3,000 Americans are dying every day now. And the vaccine that keeps people from dying from this thing is piled up in a warehouse. And that's per the company that makes it, so they're in a position to know. And they say the reason their doses of vaccine are piled up in a warehouse is because the government won't tell them where they want these doses shipped, and they have no idea why the government isn't telling them that. They're ready to go. And what's actually happening around the country now is this. And we've pulled together these reports from all over the country because we started noticing them coming in this morning, but then it started to feel like just like a cascade today. Starting in one state here, well, it felt like it was a problem with that one state. Oh, maybe it's two states. Wait, that's a state in a different part of the country. We just watched these come in one after the other, and it is starting to feel like this is maybe everywhere now. Look, the Des Moines Register, quote, Iowa will receive less COVID-19 vaccine than anticipated. The state was expecting, in fact, they had publicly announced they'd be getting 172,000 vaccine doses. By the end of December, they now say they've been told they'll get 30% less than that. So do the math. That means 50,000 doses that aren't coming, 50,000 people who are not getting the shot in Iowa. In a press release, the Iowa Department of Public Health made clear that they were told that by the federal government. It was the federal government that told them, hey, Iowa, what you thought you were getting, it's going to be 30% less. Then it was the Boston Globe reporting on Rhode Island. Rhode Island getting, quote, far less vaccine than expected next week. Quote, with 36% fewer doses on the way, Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo calls on the Trump administration to honor its commitments and provide the full allocation. In Rhode Island, they were previously told they'd get 10,725 doses next week. Now, instead, inexplicably, they're going to get less than 7,000. All those thousands of people that aren't going to get inoculated. Then in Michigan, 30% fewer doses than they expected. They thought they'd get 84,000 people shots next week. Sorry, 24,000 of those, you're not getting your shot, they're not coming. The doses aren't arriving. I mean, yeah, who are you going to tell first who thought they were getting one next week who now isn't going to get one? Then Kansas, 37% cut in what they were told they were getting. They were told to plan for 28,000 Pfizer vaccinations next week. Now it will have to be less than 18,000 because for some reason, that's all that's coming. Same in Missouri. The governor says he's been told it'll be a 25 to 30% cut in their vaccines. Same in Indiana, same in Maryland, same in Nebraska, same in New Hampshire, same in Montana, same in Oregon. What's going on? In Washington state, Governor Inslee explained it directly online as best he could. He said this: CDC has informed us that Washington state's vaccine allocation will be cut by 40% next week, and that all states are seeing similar cuts. This is disruptive and frustrating. We need accurate, predictable numbers to plan and ensure on-the-ground success. No explanation was given. Staying in Washington for a moment, the president of the Washington State Hospital Association told the Seattle Times that when state officials got this news from the feds, and then they in turn called hospitals today to deliver the grim news, they explained to hospitals that this is what they've been told by the federal government, but they didn't know the reason why this is happening. President of the Washington State Hospital Association telling the Seattle Times, quote, "This is so disappointing and frustrating. It was a quick call. Everyone wanted to cry or take a shot of tequila or something. Nurses, doctors, housekeepers, they want to know when they're going to get vaccinated," she said. But hospital leaders don't have the information they need to tell their employees when it's their turn in line. Quote, "We thought it was coming. Now we're thrown into uncertainty," she said. Adding that the State Department of Health had made some allocation decisions for the vaccine that was due to come next week. She said, quote, "I assume they're going to have to go back and rescind those offers that they've already made," which is going to be, in her words, tough, tough, tough. But why is this happening? Again, we're not like deep into this process. This is week one. Why is this happening? Pfizer says it made all its targets. It has millions of doses on the shelves. They have no production problems. They have no supply line problems. Pfizer says they just need the U.S. government to say where to send the doses that they've got. The government is making these mealy, unsourced allegations that there's some problem on Pfizer's end, but they won't really say what it was other than like casting vague aspersions at Pfizer. And the company says they're lying with what they're implying there. Nevertheless, Trump administration officials are calling all the states now, or at least a lot of the states, and telling them, yeah, 30 to 40% of the vaccine doses you were expecting next week, we're cutting those. You're not getting them. Here was Governor J.B. Pritzker in Illinois today, asked about it by reporters with, honestly, no way to explain what's happening here.
Have you learned anything more? I know the folks at Pfizer are saying it's not on their end. Anything new?
They have not provided us with any information, federal government. We get to see what the order book can look like for us for the coming week, and they haven't given us any explanation of why those numbers are smaller than they were before.
No explanation of why the numbers are suddenly dramatically smaller than they were before. No explanation, just tens of thousands of Americans who might not have to die being put at inexplicable risk of it while vaccine that's good to go sits on the shelves with nowhere to go because the federal government won't tell the company that makes and stores that vaccine where they should ship it. And the federal government can't or won't say what's going on and why they're doing that. The Washington Post today had good aggressive reporting on this, and they got this today from the Pfizer side, which is one of the more unnerving things I've read in a few days. According to the Washington Post, quote, "A person involved in the planning who spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the situation, said Pfizer executives are baffled. that the administration is not immediately distributing all of its vaccine, instead leaving much of it on the shelves. It really seems like this is not some sort of fight between Pfizer and the government, some sort of negotiation that's fallen through, and this is some hardball tactic. It really seems like Pfizer's ready to send the vaccine, and the U.S. government won't tell them where to ship it. Pfizer executives are baffled that the administration is not immediately distributing all of its vaccine, instead leaving much of it on the shelves. Baffled. I have other adjectives I would like to add to that. Joining us now is Yasmeen Abutaleb. She's a health policy reporter of The Washington Post. She was one of the reporters on that front page story about scientists delivering vaccines in record time. And she and her colleagues were among the first to report today on these unforeseen problems with the vaccine shipments. Ms. Abutaleb, thank you so much for being here tonight, and congratulations for your groundbreaking work on this important story.
Thank you so much.
So I've read your reporting carefully. There's some other national reporting on this tonight, including at the New York Times. We watched Bloomberg starting to report on this yesterday, and but more than that, I've been looking at all the local coverage in all of the states where all of these local officials, red states and blue states, they all seem equally baffled. They all seem to be, upset, but nobody seems to have a theory or an explanation as to what's going on. From your reporting, or have you and your colleagues been able to figure out what the problem might actually be here?
Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get a clear explanation on why these states started getting notices that they were going to get significantly less of Pfizer's vaccine next week. You saw the finger pointing playing out today, where initially the Trump administration said there was an issue with Pfizer's supply problem. Pfizer then said they were having no production issues and no supply problems, and they had the millions of doses sitting in warehouses ready to go. And when we spoke to several states today, they confirmed that they saw significantly reduced allocations for next week, but then referred us to the federal government for why that had dropped so suddenly.
It's very, I apologize because I'm having emotions about this, because I feel like this is exactly the wrong kind of problem that you want to have life and death consequences, right? If this is a problem that is an inexplicable hitch, that is not actually a supply chain problem, that is not even some sort of snafu in terms of trying to get things delivered at the same time people are delivering holiday packages and the post office is screwed up. It doesn't even seem to be a logistical problem. It seems to be something that's gone wrong in the federal government. I mean, if we take Pfizer's assessment of what's going on, that's where the problem seems to be. But to not have Alex Azar able to explain that, and to have the state officials saying they heard this from CDC officials, but the CDC officials who called them had no explanation for it before, to me, I feel like that's at least where the bullseye is about. That seems to be where the problem is happening. But is it that clear to you as well? Or do you think it is possible that it might be a Pfizer problem?
Well, if you take Pfizer's statement today, they're saying they have no problems. And, federal health officials told us that the reason that there were millions of Pfizer doses in the warehouses was because they were reserving them to give healthcare workers and nursing home residents the second shot in the 2-shot regimen. But then when we spoke with people familiar with the supply issue, they said, no, there are actually millions of doses that don't account for that second shot in the 2-dose regimen. So I think it's still very confusing what the issue is. It's obviously devastating for people who thought they were going to get the vaccine next week or at a certain time. And the other thing that we noted in our story today is, healthcare workers, nursing home residents, and long-term care residents and the employees in those facilities are in this phase 1A group. This now raises questions about when some states are going to be able to start vaccinating nursing home and long-term care residents.
Right, the sort of second tier priority, that next group in line, that was who was expecting to sort of get the first round of the next tranche of virus. Yasmeen, my last question is, I think, also born out of my frustration here, but this whatever's going on here seems to have sort of emerged over the past 24 hours. We got those comments from Alex Azar about there being something wrong at Pfizer. We got the response from Pfizer saying there's nothing wrong. We started hearing from all the states that they've been notified by the federal government that their allocation was getting cut. As you have followed this story, have you had any sense that what's emerging here now is now a national news story about something going wrong, is forcing this toward a solution, that whatever the problem is getting worked out? Is there any sort of scramble that you can detect to try to fix whatever the snafu may be here?
Well, the problem is there's not a lot of acknowledgement of a snafu yet on the part of the federal government. Pfizer saying there's no issue on their end. And now there will be Moderna's vaccine as part of the supply starting next week. But I do think it's eventually going to force more transparency about the issues. You know, there have been a lot of promises that distribution would go smoothly, that the government was ready to carry it out. But I think what we're seeing, since this is just the first days of distribution, is that this is a hugely complicated task, one of the biggest vaccine distribution efforts in the country, if not the biggest one ever. And it's extraordinarily complicated, and there are going to be hiccups. You can't promise that it's going to go smoothly and you're going to meet all your targets. And I think, you know, we've seen that very clearly in the first couple of days. And the issue that was raised to me today in some interviews is these are the easiest vaccinations to carry out for healthcare workers and nursing home residents and long-term residents, because they're all in the same facility. It's easier to monitor. It gets much more complicated when you get into the general population. So there are clearly a lot of issues that need to be worked out as this progresses.
That's exactly right. And I think that's a very, very important point, that this is the easy part. It's week one, and so it's not like we've got any compounding problems in terms of the way that the vaccine has gotten out there. And this is going to institutions who have been prepped to know that they were going to be first in line or second in line. They've been ready to receive it. They're capable of dealing with it. This is the low-hanging fruit in terms of getting vaccine out there. And if we've already got it sitting on shelves with nowhere to go, and the federal government chasing its tail, not even explaining that there's a problem here, I am wound up. Yasmeen Abu-Taleeb, thank you for helping us understand this. I look forward to you and your colleagues' continued reporting on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yasmeen is a health policy reporter at the Washington Post. Ooh.